Stephen Bird, Captain, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy, retired. Well, I was going to get drafted back in 1971. My draft number was 6. My birthday was October 6th. I received my draft notice on September 6th. And so for all the biblical theologians, 666 as a significant number, but I felt that was a marked man by God. So I went to the Army recruiter because, Vietnam was going on at that time back in 71, and I wanted to go to the Army, get into the reserves, and I was told, well, you've got 600 people ahead of you. And so the Navy recruiter, he was a second class pay officer, says, son, come on over here. I've got a great deal for you. And so I saw the Navy recruiter, and he told me to go ahead and go up to Southfield Reserve Center to be able to take the ASVAB, and then because I want to go medicine, become a doctor, and so being a corpsman would fit into my plans. So I did, and I enlisted on my birthday, October 6, 1971. And then from there, I went to Great Lakes for boot camp in the dead of winter of 12 to 71. Well, I was in the Boy Scouts, and so being in the Boy Scouts sort of helped me make that transition. Yes, going into boot camp, you had a variety of folks in races, and being able to get along with everyone there. So that was, I thought that was a good experience. I think the one experience was, I think it was a chief that here we were doing some type of drills. He told me to put my hand on the table, and he stopped on it, or he tried to, and I pulled away, and then I put it back. He said put it back up there. So banging orders, I put it up there, and he just crushed my fingers with his foot. I think just used me as an example, do it right, or this is what's going to happen, So it was a dead winter there at Great Lakes. And so there was one experience where there was smoke going into the barracks. They said, oh, no problem. And the next thing we know that we had to evacuate. And here we were in sub-zero temperatures and being able to throw things over our shoulders and try to keep them warm, and all. So that was my experience for boot camp. And I was one of the squad leaders as well due to my Boy Scout background. Well, yes, it certainly was a weapons training, but it was basically the shipboard training with being able to, with the water, being able to how to secure a bulkhead, with water coming on in, and being able to work together as a team. So that was the basic end of things at boot camp, working together as a team, to make sure everything was done right and being able to take care of everybody. All the way to, I think, probably about March. And then I had a few weeks off, and then I went to hospital corps school down in San Diego, California. Well, again, this is where I wanted to be because I wanted to become a physician. And so I was always interested in first aid, and when I was going to get drafted, I didn't want to go into the infantry, knowing that Vietnam was going at the time, but I didn't know that corpsmen were going to be with the Marines on going to Vietnam. But I wanted to choose what I wanted instead of being dictated. This is where you want to go, so I can choose my own course. Well, at hospital corps school, again, you're going through classes, just like high school classes, and we're right there, anatomy, physiology, first aid, and we went through a lot of simulation of bandaging, that sort of thing. How to, being able to hit yourself with morphine in the side of the leg, and a lot of moulages and that simulated casualties, and being able to do the practical hands-on into things. So that was really good, and I enjoyed my experience there at the corps school. The knowledge on what to do in a specific situation, from the experience I got on being able to do injections, giving medications, that my experience would be like a licensed practical nurse after all the training that we had, and being able to, I thought this would help me out as I wanted to go into the medical field. After hospital corps school, from there I went to the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia. So at the Naval Hospital, being a city suburban boy, coming from from Dearborn, suburbs of Detroit, and seeing all these row homes, which was absolutely new to me. It was, 19-year-olds, so somewhat of a culture shock. But the hospital was 12 stories high, and it had what we call a T-ramp, and altogether we had close to 1,200 patients, in the hospital itself. And it was just adjusting to this, what the daily routine was, and doing what nurses were asking us to do. At the hospital, I was HM3. Yeah, I was assigned to a cancer ward. It was on the eighth floor. So I was there for at least a couple of months, and then I was transferred up to officer SOQ, sick officer quarters. So I was there for another 3 or 4 months, and then the commanding officer, whenever he came up, I usually greeted him and see if I could help him out, that sort of thing. Then I was pulled off on the wards, and I was the ombudsman for the hospital, where I went to all those who were coming back from Vietnam, trying to get their pay records, luggage, service records, make sure everything was taken care of to be able to help them on out. Plus, I worked down in patient affairs, so I had other activities down there as well, with the decedent affairs, other paperwork, administrative paperwork that I had to accomplish down in that department. And I was there at the hospital where a fellow that had shared with me about the Lord back in San Diego, he was there, and so he said it was good Bible preaching church behind the Naval Hospital. So I went to church on a Sunday night, and so as soon as I stepped through the doors, I could sense something was different about this church. It was an Italian Pentecostal church, and so they saying, I'm Sam, I'm Joe, I'm John, and they welcomed me like I was one of their long-lost sons, coming back in the fold at 19 years of age. And then they introduced me to the pastor, and he just had a regular, suit on, and they started their service, which to me was very, very informal. But after the service, the folks were worshiping and praising God in their own tradition, and I felt compelled that I needed to know this God, and that's where I committed my life to Christ. Was at that time, and then it was doing a process where this friend of mine by the name of Larry, and as we were going on the foyer Sunday night, he had his eye on one sister, I had my eye on the other sister. Now he's my brother-in-law to my wife, and that's my Christian soap opera I tell everybody. And from the hospital, we got married back in 1974. 1974, we got married. Then I went to Bible college and seminary in Springfield, Missouri. My 2 children were born in Springfield, Missouri as well. And after I graduated from the seminary, I pastored a church in Columbia, Kentucky for about 2 years, and then I was recalled back on active duty as a Navy chaplain. After I got off active duty and went to school, then I made HM2, Hospital Corpsman Second Class, and then I became a Hospital Corpsman First Class, HM1. So during my reserve time, I was an E6 before I transitioned on going to chaplain school. Well, it was a great time. It was back in June of 1980, where I went to chaplain school, and being able to go through, what military etiquette, how to wear the uniform, and a lot of those things I already knew. And naval history, chaplain corps history as well. And the big slogan was cooperation without compromise, so that we had to cooperate with all the other faith groups, but without compromising our own faith. So, with Roman Catholics, Jewish, Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, Church of God in Christ, Assemblies of God, we had all types of faith groups. And at that time, back in 1980, we were one of the biggest classes of 65 ministers, priests, rabbis, other clergy members in that class. And one of the big things is that we had a gunnery sergeant, that he was really, he was really hardcore, and if someone did wrong, we all paid the consequences for that we had to work together as a unit. And so I had a good time there at chaplain school. And then I was recalled back on active duty as a Navy chaplain. President Reagan was, beefing up a 600 ship Navy, and it was a good time to go into the chaplain corps. And so I prayed. I said, God, if you put me on a ship, make sure it's a big one, doesn't go back and forth and up and down. And lo and behold, He heard the cry of my heart. I was on board the Saratoga. And so from there, that was my first duty station as a Navy chaplain, was on board the Saratoga. Well, the Saratoga, was in Mayport, Florida, and so the ship was out when I came in. However, the ship came in, on one day late in the afternoon, and I did not report in until the next day, thinking that I already reported into the base instead of that day. And so what happened was I reported the next day at about 10 o'clock and met the senior chaplain, the other chaplain, and religious program specialist. And then they showed me where my stateroom would be, where, in regard to the chapel, showing me the forecastle, where the officer mess was, and just give me an orientation, of the ship itself. It wasn't until about a month later when I received my leave and earnings statement that I had 1 day leave. And so I went up to the admin office and said, why am I charged 1 day leave? And they said, well, chaplain, you were UA the first day when you came on board ship. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll take the 1 day leave and to be able to, smooth things out. So being new in the chaplain corps and not trying to understand the protocol was a transition. Well, seeing the Saratoga, this was huge. You have a floating city, where you had everybody, on board there, and getting lost can be, not really hard on getting lost on board ship. And so, being able to go up, knowing where the flight deck was, the hangar bay, where, the boiler rooms were, being able to eat, and so the officer mess, where we had chapel on the forecastle. That's where the chain anchor was at, and so that's where underway. That's where we would have our services, but we would have in port. We have the services in the chapel itself, which would hold about 35 people, jam packed. Well, the days looked like that. I was in a two-man stateroom, and so it was usually. Reveille was at 6 o'clock, being able to go to chow. We usually started work in port, work day started at 7:30 until 1600 or 1700. Out to sea, Reveille was at 6 o'clock, 06, and then, eat, and then being able to get to work at 07:30, and then you had your routine, paperwork, maybe Red Cross messages coming on in, counseling other sailors and Marines, being able to visit the spaces and being able to see how they're doing. Sunday was usually worship services and any other activities that we had with the chapel program. When we deployed back in 1984, this is my first deployment, first time being away from family for 6-7 months, and so the first day was probably the longest day until we pulled out of port, and so that's when we were on our way to go to the Mediterranean. There was an incident, just a couple hours before we were supposed to leave. A lot of times, go see the chaplain. See the chaplain will take care of your needs. And we had one lady came on board and she was in distress and she fell out right there. She didn't want to move, and finally she had to be physically removed from the ship, so we could get underway. So that was, I think that was a little stressful on all of us. What do we do with this, with this spouse coming in, falling on the floor, and basically that she wanted her husband to stay home with her. And finally that worked out for the other sailor, but that was a little stressing for us on that end. But then we're on our way going over to the Mediterranean, and it was on a Sunday. It was a Sunday morning. We were outside of the Azores, and here it was. The Catholic service was first in the forecastle, and we were taking some real heavy seas, and so the Catholic service, just dismissed, and the water. The water was coming through the hose pipes, which is like 140 feet, hose pipes, and going to the overhead and splashing all the way back to the back of the forecastle. And we had like 3 inches of water on the deck at that time. So the Catholic folks got out of there before they got water baptized at that time. And so we had to have, so what we did is that we had the Protestant service in the chapel, and we were all standing up, and we were like shoulder to shoulder. I could hardly move as I was in a little corner on trying to preach my message, to everybody else, because everybody, it was just, we had probably about, 75 people packed right there in the chapel. And then as we were transitioning along, being able to go through over to the Mediterranean, we had the many port stops, there, and it was a good deployment. Oh, the first one was Naples, Italy. Naples, Italy was great, for they had a Christian Servicemen Center, and so a lot of guys would go up there. We would, have a meal. They would serve us a meal, but then we would have to clean up afterwards. And so we're back there. We're singing hymns and songs and choruses, and we're just having a good old time, back there. And then making some of the tours there, not only in Naples, but being able to go up to Rome, and being able to stay up there for a day or so, and then coming on back and seeing some of the sights was really a lot of fun. I was in a two-man stateroom, and so we shared a common sink. We had our own locker, and to put all our uniforms and gear in, and so that was fine. Usually I had a top bunk, and so getting in and out could have been a real challenge. But at that time, could be able to do that. Then I had my own stateroom that was underneath Catapult 1, and it was noisy. And so finally they moved me from that to something closer to the chapel office. And so I was glad, even though it was a two-man stateroom, at least it was a lot quieter than being underneath the catapult. And the food was really pretty good. They had a variety of food within the officer mess, so that was great. So food was really good. Well, it was, we usually had a duty chaplain. They know who the duty chaplain was, and we had a rotation. Since we had 4 chaplains, we had the senior chaplain, we had 2, we had a Catholic priest, and then myself. I was the division officer with 7 religious program specialists, RPs as we call them, to be able to man the library, and we had our offices there within the library itself. And so they had to make a little office space for me, since I was the 3rd person on, and they didn't have a third office space. Yeah, a little tight, but we got through it, and so that was good. No, it was no Thanksgiving, no Christmas, because it was right after, it was in April, so there wasn't anything major during that time. We did have the Jewish rabbi that stayed with me, Arnie Resnikov, very well known as a Jewish chaplain, and he stayed with me during the High Holy Days. So that would be in October time frame. He stayed with me while he went to the other ships as well. And so yeah, I was on the Holy Hilo, as we called it, going to the other ships, and I did several services on some other ships during that time. But that was the only person was the Jewish holidays that we had. Christian holidays, there were no Christian holidays. It's just destroyers and frigates, Oh, that was usually met the commanding officer of each of the vessels, showed me where we were going to have the service, being able to have a meal there in the officers' mess, and they were very, very accommodating to be able to have the chaplain come on board to be able to provide for their men and women. And return home, everybody was pretty well excited. You know, we're coming on home, being able to see our loved ones, and being able to came in early. I remember came in early. I think it was on a Tuesday or so, and the families were out there on the pier. A lot of excitement, a lot of joy, you know, being able to come on home and being able to appreciate, you know, what we missed. I had written orders. I had orders in hand to go to Parris Island to be with Marines. I was really, really excited to go to Parris Island. And I got a call from the Air Land boss or chaplain there and said that we need you to go to, he wanted to talk to me. And so I was on board Saratoga at that time, flew in on the COD into Guantanamo. So I flew on in, got on the phone the next day, and he said, Chaplain, we want you to go to Holy Loch, Scotland. My first 2 words out of my mouth was, holy smokes. And I said, where is Holy Loch? It's over there on the other side of the world. And he called my wife and told my wife, you'll have a ball there, a B-A-L-L. My wife to this day says, I'm still trying to find where the ball's at. And she did, you know, she survived. She had her, I survived Holy Loch shirt, but she did, yeah, it was a little challenge for her, you know, over there. But we still had a good time. We had good camaraderie over there in Holy Loch. And then I had orders to go to Camp Lejeune, 2nd Marine Division, and becoming a battalion and regimental chaplain. Now, I was really excited on going with the Marines. You know, here I'm their chaplain, and it's going to be very, very rigorous, you know, experience. And I was looking for the challenge, and I enjoyed my time, you know, with the Marines. You know, that was probably one of my number one, being on an aircraft carrier, being number 2 in regard to my chaplain experience. And I really enjoyed being with the Marines, going out with them, you know, overnights, and being able to minister to them. From there, I went up to Duke Divinity School to be able to get my THM because this was a postgraduate program that I was selected for. And then went out to Camp Pendleton, was one of the base chaplains there all the way from 91 to 93. I was the chaplain of one of the largest chapels there, and I enjoyed that. I think it was a little bit a little harder on my family as my son was he was a sophomore, going to be a junior. He was in wrestling, and now was going to be the captain of the wrestling team, and he had a difficult, challenging time on readjusting over at Camp Pendleton. So it was a challenge for all of us, you know, at Camp Pendleton. I still enjoyed what we did, but it was a challenge personally on my family. And then I got off active duty. Then I affiliated into the reserves, and I had a myriad of reserve duties. From Tennessee, down to Louisiana, Florida, up to the Pentagon. Back down to Florida, Louisiana, in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I had a very, and I retired from the reserve side of the house, but with 40 years of service, came out to 21 years of active duty time.